I have always believed that marriage is first and foremost about trust. When Emma and I got married, I was sure that our relationship was strong. We had a child, we were building a life together, and although there were difficulties, I never thought that we would be on the verge of a crisis. But recently something has changed. Not immediately, but gradually, drop by drop. It all started with little things. Emma became withdrawn, less interested in our usual conversations in the evenings. Her phone, which used to be on the table or anywhere in the house, is now always with her. And while I never checked her messages, never needed to, now it was starting to bother me. She looked away when I asked about her day, answered in short phrases, and in the evenings she was more and more late at work or went to meetings with friends about whom I knew nothing. My doubts peaked when my mother said she saw Emma with Tom, her old friend. Tom has been a part of our lives since before we were married. We were good friends, and I even thought he was a good guy. However, when he disappeared from our sight and moved to another city, I thought that this was the end of our shared history. And now, the mother claimed that she saw them together, arm in arm, as they used to be. It confused me. I knew she couldn't just lie like that, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions either. Perhaps it was a chance encounter, a friendly meeting. But then why didn't Emma mention it? One evening, when Emma came home late again, I couldn't resist and asked, "Emma, why are you seeing Tom so much lately? My mother saw you together." She raised her eyebrows in surprise, but there was no trace of concern on her face. "Tom?" "Yes, I saw him several times. He returned to the city for a while. We were just discussing old matters. Nothing more." "But why didn't you tell me?" I insisted. "I just didn't think it was important. We only talked a few times." She turned away and started cooking something in the kitchen, clearly avoiding further conversation. Something is wrong here. My inner feeling did not allow me to just forget about it. I could feel suspicion growing inside me. She became cold, and not only physically, but also emotionally. There is practically no closeness left between us. Her kisses became short and formal, her hugs shallow, and her conversations empty. Weeks passed, and the situation only worsened. I tried to focus on work, on our child, on household chores, but I kept thinking about this new friendship between Emma and Tom. My anxieties reached a critical level after another night when Emma came home late, avoiding my eyes and answering my questions dismissively. Something was clearly wrong here. I could not wait any longer and live in constant tension. I needed to know the truth. And I decided to act. The next morning I found the private investigator's contact. It was a new and unusual step for me, but I saw no other way out. No matter what it sounds like, I couldn't stand the uncertainty any longer. I understood that the best way to know the truth was to see it with my own eyes. The detective listened to me carefully and assured me that such situations happen more often than I could have thought. "We'll find out," he said when I told him about my suspicions. "You need facts, not guesses. And we will provide them to you." I agreed. We agreed to install cameras in the apartment and conduct surveillance to find out what really happens when I'm not at home. At that moment, it seemed to me that this was the only way to understand the situation. This decision did not give me peace. I felt guilty for taking such a step. I didn't want everything to turn out to be true, but at the same time I was afraid that my suspicions were justified. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear: time and facts would put everything in its place. Waiting was the hardest. Detectives came to our house the very next morning. I watched how they skillfully installed small hidden cameras in the most inconspicuous places. It all looked so imperceptible that Emma definitely couldn't have guessed. They did everything quickly, as if they had done it hundreds of times. I felt as if I was crossing a line that should not have been crossed. My head was full of doubts, and they all revolved around one question: is this the right move? I stood in the corner of our living room and watched the detectives work. The cameras were so small that you couldn't see them, even if you looked specifically for them. One of the detectives, a man named Jack, came up to me and said, "Everything is ready. Now we just wait and watch." I nodded, feeling my stomach tighten with tension. Jack and I discussed the surveillance plan. The cameras were installed in several rooms, in the living room, in the kitchen and in our bedroom. Their records were to be sent to the detective's computer and I could access everything at any time. "We'll be monitoring her in real time," Jack added. "If something happens, you will be the first to know about it." After they left, I felt anxiety rising inside me. Time passed extremely slowly. I tried to work, but every minute seemed like an eternity. I knew the detectives would send me the first surveillance results by the end of the day, and that anticipation only added to the tension. It seemed to me that every sound in the house hid some secret, every step Emma took was suspicious. That day she returned home as usual. Nothing unusual. She greeted the child, went to the kitchen, prepared dinner. I watched her as if she were a stranger. Her movements seemed mechanical, her conversations short. She avoided my questions about how the day had gone and, as usual, she didn't mention Tom. Later, when we went to bed, I felt that the gulf between us had grown even wider. We slept in the same bed, but the feeling of closeness disappeared. Emma had her back to me, and I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking that tomorrow the detectives might tell me something I never wanted to know. The next morning I woke up to the phone ringing. It was Jack. "Michael, we've started getting records," he said. "Now we are reviewing the material, and there is something interesting." I felt my heart speeding up. What did they find? Flashed through my head. Jack said that the surveillance will continue, but they have already recorded several points that may be important. Yesterday, at lunchtime, Emma suddenly left the house. We didn't know where she was going, so we followed her. She met her husband in a cafe. We don't know who it is, but it wasn't Tom. I scrambled to my feet, feeling everything inside of me tighten. Surely it wasn't Tom? I asked, grabbing the phone with both hands. Exactly. A completely different person, Jack confirmed. We continue to monitor, but this is clearly something worth paying attention to. My head was spinning. Who was it? What happened? Why didn't Emma tell me she was going out? Maybe it's just a meeting with someone you know. Perhaps there is no reason to worry. But my intuition said otherwise. Jack promised to send me the tapes so I could review them myself. I was nervously anticipating these videos, imagining the worst. My imagination painted different scenarios, from a simple lunch with a colleague to something much more serious. All this worried me even more. Finally, I got a message from the detectives with the video footage. My heart was pounding as I opened the file. The video showed Emma leaving the house at lunchtime. She looked calm, confident. There was nothing suspicious about her behavior. She got into a taxi and went to the city center. There, in a cafe, she met a man whom I did not recognize. He was about my age, with a beard and a stylish suit. They sat down at the table, and I noticed that they were talking quite close to each other. My thoughts were confused. Maybe it's just a work meeting. But why didn't she tell me about her? Why so quiet? I couldn't wait to talk to Jack again and learn more details. In the evening, when Emma came home, I couldn't help but feel the tension inside. She behaved normally, but something about her no longer seemed so innocent to me. All these small changes in behavior now took on new meaning. "How was your day?" I asked her, trying to hide my nervous tone. "Everything was fine," she answered shortly, without looking into my eyes. And here I was standing on the threshold of something that could destroy our lives. What was it? An innocent meeting or the beginning of something worse? I needed more information, but the feeling that I was missing out grew stronger by the minute. Waiting was the hardest. Detectives came to our house the very next morning. I watched how they skillfully installed small hidden cameras in the most inconspicuous places. It all looked so imperceptible that Emma definitely couldn't have guessed. They did everything quickly, as if they had done it hundreds of times. I felt as if I was crossing a line that should not have been crossed. My head was full of doubts, and they all revolved around one question: is this the right move? I stood in the corner of our living room and watched the detectives work. The cameras were so small that you couldn't see them, even if you looked specifically for them. One of the detectives, a man named Jack, came up to me and said, "Everything is ready. Now we just wait and watch." I nodded, feeling my stomach tighten with tension. Jack and I discussed the surveillance plan. The cameras were installed in several rooms, in the living room, in the kitchen and in our bedroom. Their records were to be sent to the detective's computer and I could access everything at any time. "We'll be monitoring her in real time," Jack added. "If something happens, you will be the first to know about it." After they left, I felt anxiety rising inside me. Time passed extremely slowly. I tried to work, but every minute seemed like an eternity. I knew the detectives would send me the first surveillance results by the end of the day, and that anticipation only added to the tension. It seemed to me that every sound in the house hid some secret, every step Emma took was suspicious. That day she returned home as usual. Nothing unusual. She greeted the child, went to the kitchen, prepared dinner. I watched her as if she were a stranger. Her movements seemed mechanical, her conversations short. She avoided my questions about how the day had gone and, as usual, she didn't mention Tom. Later, when we went to bed, I felt that the gulf between us had grown even wider. We slept in the same bed, but the feeling of closeness disappeared. Emma had her back to me, and I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking that tomorrow the detectives might tell me something I never wanted to know. The next morning I woke up to the phone ringing. It was Jack. "Michael, we've started getting records," he said. "Now we are reviewing the material, and there is something interesting." I felt my heart speeding up. What did they find? Flashed through my head. Jack said that the surveillance will continue, but they have already recorded several points that may be important. Yesterday, at lunchtime, Emma suddenly left the house. We didn't know where she was going, so we followed her. She met her husband in a cafe. We don't know who it is, but it wasn't Tom. I scrambled to my feet, feeling everything inside of me tighten. Surely it wasn't Tom? I asked, grabbing the phone with both hands. Exactly. A completely different person, Jack confirmed. We continue to monitor, but this is clearly something worth paying attention to. My head was spinning. Who was it? What happened? Why didn't Emma tell me she was going out? Maybe it's just a meeting with someone you know. Perhaps there is no reason to worry. But my intuition said otherwise. Jack promised to send me the tapes so I could review them myself. I was nervously anticipating these videos, imagining the worst. My imagination painted different scenarios, from a simple lunch with a colleague to something much more serious. All this worried me even more. Finally, I got a message from the detectives with the video footage. My heart was pounding as I opened the file. The video showed Emma leaving the house at lunchtime. She looked calm, confident. There was nothing suspicious about her behavior. She got into a taxi and went to the city center. There, in a cafe, she met a man whom I did not recognize. He was about my age, with a beard and a stylish suit. They sat down at the table, and I noticed that they were talking quite close to each other. My thoughts were confused. Maybe it's just a work meeting. But why didn't she tell me about her? Why so quiet? I couldn't wait to talk to Jack again and learn more details. In the evening, when Emma came home, I couldn't help but feel the tension inside. She behaved normally, but something about her no longer seemed so innocent to me. All these small changes in behavior now took on new meaning. "How was your day?" I asked her, trying to hide my nervous tone. Everything was fine, she answered shortly, without looking into my eyes. And here I was standing on the threshold of something that could destroy our lives. What was it? An innocent meeting or the beginning of something worse? I needed more information, but the feeling that I was missing out grew stronger by the minute. The next day, after I connected Emma's phone to an app that allowed me to monitor her calls and texts, I felt even worse than before. I went to a new level of suspicion, crossed a line I never imagined. I was no longer just suspicious, I was ready to find out the truth at any cost, even if it destroyed everything we had built. Every time her phone beeped or vibrated, I checked the app. Every time my heart pounded at the thought that I was about to see something that would confirm my worst suspicions. But the day passed, and there was nothing suspicious. She received regular messages from friends, parents, colleagues. No sign of Tom or anyone else. Maybe I'm exaggerating, I thought. Maybe it's really just a friendly meeting and I made it all up. But what I already knew continued to torment me. Emma and Tom in the hotel, this fact could not be dismissed so easily. On the second day, everything changed. Early this morning, when I checked the app, I saw that Emma had received a new message. The sender was Tom. The message was short, but its content made my heart skip a beat. Everything is ready. Let's meet today at 2 o'clock. The place is the same. I could barely hold the phone in my hands. My breathing became heavy. Meeting at 2 o'clock. Same place. Was it the same hotel or not? I could no longer wait and endure these ambiguities. My suspicions seemed to be coming true. I quickly called Jack. Jack, I just saw a message from Tom on Emma's phone. They plan to meet today at 2 o'clock. Can you follow her? I said, barely hiding the panic in my voice. Of course, we are ready. We'll be following her every move, Michael. I'll let you know when we figure something out, he answered confidently. I could not concentrate on work, my thoughts were somewhere far away. I was filled with fear and rage at the same time. I tried to imagine what would happen next. I had to wait until the detectives gave me the news. Time passed, as if he was mocking me. I tried to find any excuse not to think the worst. Maybe this is just another friendly meeting. Maybe they really aren't doing anything wrong, these thoughts raced through my head. But the reality that awaited me ahead did not allow me to discard these fears. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon I received a call from Jack. Michael, she is back at the hotel. We saw her arrive and Tom was there too. They met in the parking lot and went inside together. That was the moment when my whole world was shaken. I could no longer deny what was happening. They did meet in secret. In the hotel. I had no doubts. I want to meet them, I said, not even thinking about the consequences. I was overcome with anger. Tell me in which room they stayed. Michael, calm down, Jack replied. I understand your emotions, but now is not the time to take drastic steps. We have to wait for more evidence. If you go there now, it may end in a scandal, and you will not get anything that will help you in the future. His words were rational, but a storm raged inside me. I wanted to stop everything immediately, see them together and get answers. But Jack was right. If I do it now, the situation may get out of hand and I may not be able to get the evidence I am looking for. Okay, I sighed. But I want to know everything they do there. Jack assured me that he would continue to monitor and let me know as soon as he learned anything. I felt helpless sitting at home and waiting for news. My head ached from the thoughts of what might be happening in that hotel. I imagined the worst pictures, and each one was worse than the last. After several hours, which seemed like an eternity to me, Jack called again. They left the hotel. There was nothing suspicious on the outside, they behaved like ordinary acquaintances. We will continue to follow them, but so far there is no direct evidence of their closeness. My patience was at its limit. I wanted to hear more. I wanted everything to become clear, but instead I got only half hints that only reinforced my doubts. That night I decided I couldn't wait any longer. The next time they meet, I will follow them myself and see for myself. The next days passed like a blur. I couldn't think of anything but Emma and Tom. I could barely watch her at home. Every conversation we had seemed superficial, every gesture she made was fake. She acted as if nothing had happened, as if our lives had not changed. But I knew that there was a gulf between us that would be difficult to overcome. I decided not to delay. When Jack informed me that they were planning to meet again, I decided to go it alone. I could no longer be just an observer. I needed to know the truth. And this time I was ready to see everything with my own eyes. Jack contacted me early this morning. "Michael, they have another meeting today," he said. "We'll keep an eye on them as usual, but if you want to go alone, that's your decision." "I'm going," I answered firmly. I needed no more reassurance or warning. I wanted to see it with my own eyes and hear what they were talking about. As soon as I got the information about the meeting place, I went there. The hotel was the same as last time. I arrived an hour before my appointment and parked nearby. My heart was beating wildly, my hands were sweating. I sat in the car, looking at the entrance to the hotel, and waited for the moment when they would appear. A few minutes before 2 o'clock I saw Emma. She got out of the taxi, looking calm, even smiling a little. Something about her behavior gave me mixed feelings. I saw her the same as always, but at the same time I understood that this was only a shell, behind which something more was hidden. I didn't wait for Tom. I got out of the car and quickly walked to the entrance. As soon as I entered the hotel lobby, I saw Emma come to the reception desk and ask for the room key. She took it and went to the elevator. I followed her at a safe distance. The elevator stopped on the 5th floor. I saw Emma leave and walk down the corridor to the door of one of the rooms. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. My heart was ready to jump out of my chest. I walked closer and stopped at the door she had entered. There was chaos in my head. What to do next? Knock on the door? Break in? I stood as if buried, not knowing what to do, when I heard voices inside. It was Emma's voice, she was talking to someone. I listened, but I couldn't make out the words. They spoke quietly, but something in her tone made me catch my breath. I decided to stay by the door, listening to their conversation. I understood that any sudden movement could ruin everything. I needed to be careful. A few minutes later I heard footsteps. It must have been Tom, he had just arrived. Their conversation became more expressive, and I began to make out the words. Emma was laughing and it was tearing me apart. Her laugh was easy and casual, like when we first met. She joked about something, and Tom answered her calmly and laughed too. Then I heard them start talking about the past. About the times when they were friends. And then Emma said what I feared the most. "I missed the way things were before. You always knew how to support me." Her voice sounded too warm, too intimate. I couldn't take it anymore. I could feel my patience breaking. I gathered my strength and took a deep breath. It's time to find out the truth. I raised my hand to knock on the door, but at the same moment I heard Emma say something that stopped me in my tracks. "But I can't leave Michael. It would be wrong." Her words went through me like a knife. What did that mean? Were they planning something together? Was it just an emotional connection? My thoughts started to get confused. I took another deep breath and was about to enter when I heard another phrase that made me freeze. "We can't hide it any longer, Tom. We need to tell him." I was stunned. What were they going to tell me? What is really going on between them? Is it more than just a novel? I stood by the door, feeling my heart tear apart. I was so close to opening them and bursting in, but something held me back. I didn't know if I was ready to hear what was inside that I stood by the door as if chained to the floor. My heart was beating wildly, and my head was filled with the worst guesses. They were going to tell me something, but what exactly? It was a mystery I could not fathom, and the more I tried to imagine, the more my hands shook with tension. Emma and Tom spoke more and more quietly, as if they were afraid that someone would hear them. I listened to every word, trying to figure out what they were up to. Their conversation was no longer filled with jokes or laughter, it became serious. And that scared me even more. "You know we can't go on like this," said Tom. His voice was low and almost sad. "Yes, I know. But he will never forgive me if he finds out the whole truth," replied Emma. My heart froze. What is the truth? What were they hiding from me? I could no longer just stand and wait. My patience has run out. I understood that the moment of truth had come. I carefully turned the door handle and opened it. They both stopped abruptly when they saw me at the door. Shock and fear flashed in their eyes. "What do you want to tell me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice under control. Emma and Tom looked at each other. There was panic in her eyes, and something like sadness in his. I could see her trying to compose herself, but the words seemed to be stuck in her throat. Tom took a step forward as if preparing to take charge. "Michael. We wanted to tell you about this earlier," Tom began. "It's not as you think. We didn't mean to hurt you." "Hurt?" I exclaimed, feeling anger rising inside me. "I'm already hurt by what you two are doing behind my back. How long does it last? What have you been hiding from me?" Emma tried to insert a word. "Michael, please let me explain." "Explain?" I cut her off. "Do you want to explain why you meet Tom in hotels? What is there to explain at all? You both lied to me. How can I trust you after this?" My anger turned into despair. I couldn't hold back my emotions anymore, and they poured out of me with every word. Emma looked dazed, her hands were shaking and she tried to speak a few times but her voice broke. "It's not what you think, Michael," she finally said quietly, almost in a whisper. "Tom and I don't have what you imagine. This is not a novel." "Not a novel? Then what is it?" I exclaimed, not knowing what else to call it. Tom looked at me, trying to explain, but his words did not sound convincing. "We met for another reason, Michael. We were discussing something important. And I know it looks suspicious, but... Is it important?" I cut him off. "You call that important? You meet in a hotel, hide all this from me, and now you talk about important matters? What are you even talking about?" Emma finally gathered her strength and said, "Michael, I don't know how to say this. But I have to. This is about us. You, me and, our child." I felt my blood run cold. Our child? What did that mean? What do you want to say? I asked, trying to hide the anxiety that was growing inside me. Emma took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eye. "This is Tom. He, the father of our child." My legs buckled. It was as if the world had turned upside down. Emma's words seemed to cut through the air, and I couldn't find an answer. My head started to swim. I looked at her, trying to comprehend what I had just heard, but it was too painful. "What did you say?" I asked quietly, not believing my ears. "That was before we were married," she continued, her voice fragile, almost breaking. "I was pregnant before we got married, but then Tom and I broke up, and I decided that you should become a father. I knew you would be a better husband and father than Tom." Tom stood by, silent and looking sullenly at the floor. He did not dare to look me in the eye. My head was spinning. I couldn't believe what I heard. My whole reality suddenly collapsed. I thought I was the father of our child, I thought I knew Emma. But it was a lie from the beginning. "Did you know this all along?" I asked, barely able to control my voice. "Yes." Her voice was barely audible. And I am very sorry. But I thought that it would be better for everyone. Tom knew too, but we decided you should be the father. It was wrong, I know. And now I see that I made a mistake. A mistake. Barely restraining myself, I answered. You hid the truth about our child from me. This is not just a mistake. My anger turned into total chaos. Everything I thought was important in my life was now a lie. I was standing in front of two people I trusted and they ruined everything. Emma's words kept echoing in my head. Tom is the father of our child. I stood in front of them, not knowing what to do next. My life, our marriage, everything I thought was mine, fell apart in an instant. I couldn't believe that they had kept the truth from me for so long. How long did you plan to keep it a secret? I asked, trying not to raise my voice, even though everything was raging inside me. Emma took a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears, but she tried to stay calm. I didn't know how to tell you. At first it seemed like the right decision. I was scared and didn't want to lose you. And then everything became even more complicated. The more time passed, the harder it was to open up. I looked at her and could not believe that this was the same woman with whom I was building a life. The woman I loved, whom I trusted. How could she hide such an important thing from me for so many years? And you? I turned to Tom. You knew it all along and kept quiet. Why did you even come back into our lives? Why now? Tom looked depressed, but he didn't try to make excuses. He looked at me and said, I knew it was none of my business, Michael. Emma and I were no longer together then. I respected her choice and we both decided that you would be the best parent for this child. But now that I'm back in town, it's getting harder to ignore. I can't hide from it anymore. His words made me feel a mixture of rage and pity. I didn't know what was worse, that they were hiding the truth or that Tom now wanted to be a part of our child's life. Do you think that now that you have revealed the truth, it will change anything? I asked sarcastically. What do you expect from me? What can I say? Thanks for deciding to share this information just now. Emma looked at me through tears, her voice low and broken. Michael, I know it's terrible. But I love you. And I know you love our child no matter who the biological father is. I don't want to lose you and I don't want you to go. You are her real father and you always will be. I didn't know what to say to that. I loved our child as my own, and the fact that she was not my biological child did not change those feelings. But the fact that I had been lied to all these years, that I had lived in a lie, was unbearable. And what do you want me to do? I asked, looking directly at Emma. You want me to just forget about it? For me to forgive all this as if nothing had happened? No, she whispered. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just asking you to give us another chance. I know it seems impossible, but we can overcome it. I believe in us. I looked at her, and for the first time in all this time, I didn't see a lie in her eyes. She was really broken. She really regretted everything that happened. But can I forgive her for that? My anger gradually turned into a mixture of disappointment and sadness. I loved Emma, and it was true. I loved our baby. But I wasn't sure if I could forgive such a betrayal. It wasn't just a simple lie, it was more than that, it was a lie about my life. Tom still stood aside, watching us silently. He didn't interfere, but his presence was a burden on me. Do you want to become a part of her life? I asked Tom, looking him straight in the eye. Tom sighed and replied, I don't want to destroy what you have. I don't want to pretend to be a father. But I think my child has a right to know the truth. And I'm ready to help you as soon as I can. His words evoked conflicting emotions in me. On the one hand, I understood his desire to be honest, but on the other hand, it only made the situation more difficult. Michael, Emma said to me, her voice shaking. I know I made a mistake. But I love you. I always loved. Please don't leave us. My thoughts were swarming, I could not find any clear solution. All I knew was that this situation had changed us forever. We will never be the same again. And whatever I decided, I had to think not only about myself. I don't know, I finally said. I just don't know if I can forgive that. Emma took a step forward, but I raised my hand to stop her. I'll go, I said. I need to think. I need to figure out how to move on after all of this. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Tom stepped back silently, giving me space. I didn't want to talk to any of them anymore at this point. I just wanted to leave. When I left the hotel, the cold air hit me in the face, but it did not bring relief. I got into the car and just sat there, looking at the road in front of me, not knowing where to go or what to do next. My world was no longer what I knew it to be. I sat in the car feeling empty inside. The hotel was left behind, but thoughts about what had happened did not leave me for a moment. I didn't know where to go, what to do, or even how to start picking up the pieces of my life. Everything that I thought was solid and unchanging suddenly became an illusion. I was losing control not only of my marriage, but of myself. I went on an aimless trip around the city, trying to find an answer to the questions that were bothering me. How can you continue to live after such betrayal? How can you forgive a person who cheated not just together, but hid the truth for years? I had to decide if there was a chance to save our relationship or if this was truly the end. In the end, I settled on an old waterfront spot where Emma and I used to hang out before the wedding. I went down to the water and sat on a bench, listening to the waves lapping softly against the shore. We were happy here, and this thought resonated painfully in my heart. Those memories that once brought warmth and comfort, now caused only bitterness. I thought about our baby. No matter what I learned, I loved her more than anything in the world. She was mine, even if her biological father was Tom. I raised her, supported her, helped her grow. It was hard for me to imagine my life without her, and I didn't want any of this to affect our relationship. But what to do with Emma? You could say I love her, but is that enough? She didn't just cheat on me physically, she cheated on me emotionally by keeping this secret for years. Will I be able to trust her again? Can I forgive her and try to start over? My thoughts were so confused that I didn't even notice a person approaching me. I looked up to see my old friend, Jack. We had not seen each other for several months, and his appearance here was unexpected. Michael? He said, crouching next to her. Are you alone here? I nodded, unable to get a word out. Jack was the only one who always understood me without asking too much. You look like you've been run over by a truck, he said with a light laugh, but when he saw my expression, his mood changed. What happened? I sighed and began to speak, although I didn't know where to begin. I told him everything, about Emma, about Tom, about what I had learned at the hotel. The words flowed non-stop, as if all this time I was just waiting for an opportunity to speak. Jack listened attentively, without interrupting, and when I had finished, he was silent for a while, as if considering everything he had heard. That's harsh, Michael, he finally said. But I will tell you this, sometimes we are faced with a choice where there is no right decision. There is only what you can accept and what you cannot. Do you love her? I was silent for a long moment before answering, yes. But that doesn't change what she did. No, it doesn't, agreed Jack. But is this enough to build something new from what is left? Only you can decide that. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about accepting what happened and moving on if you're ready. His words hit the very heart. I really didn't know if I was ready for it. I didn't know if I could forgive and live with it. We sat in silence as I thought about everything Jack had said. Memories of our happy moments with Emma, how we went through difficulties together, how we built our life, were swarming in my head. But at the same time, I was haunted by thoughts of betrayal, of years of lies. When Jack left, I stayed on the bench trying to make up my mind. Late in the evening, when it was getting dark, I finally figured out what to do. I came home late. Entering our apartment, I felt that the tension in the air had not yet dissipated. Emma was sitting on the couch with her phone in her hands, but when she saw me, she put it down and stood up. "Michael," she began, but I raised my hand to stop her. "No, let me be the first," I said, trying to speak calmly even though my emotions were still bubbling up inside. She nodded, and I continued, "I was thinking about everything that happened. That you hid the truth from me, about Tom, about our child. And I came to the conclusion that I couldn't just forget all this. It hurts too much. But I love our baby. And I can't lose her because of your mistakes." Emma sighed and asked quietly, "Will you leave us?" I looked at her and answered, "I don't know. I can't say that yet. Maybe we need time to figure it all out. But I do know one thing, we're going to have to build trust again if we want to keep this family alive. And it won't happen overnight." Emma nodded, tears welling up in her eyes, but she wasn't crying. She knew I was right. "I will do my best, Michael," she said. "I know I broke your trust, but I'm ready to fight for us." "Let's see," I answered, no longer sure of my feelings. We stood in silence, not knowing what to do next. I understood that we had a long way to go. A path that can both save us and finally tear us apart.